Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I'm Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Thursday. Thank you so much for joining me. Awesome show planned for you today. We're going to keep it tight. I'm going to be completely authentic and real with you. Today, I'm going on Piers Morgan's show, and it's going to start taping in about an hour. And so we got to be tight and disciplined today with today's show. We're going to discuss these Tom Brady, Matt Stafford allegations, rumors, whatever. There's some NFL rule changes we'll try to discuss. Shedeur Sanders, according to Albert Breer, keeps falling in the draft. Hopefully we'll get to that. Dwayne Wade wants to end the All-Star game. NBA Centel, a very popular social media feed on X. It's dead now. It's one of the funniest, best parody accounts, and apparently it's been ixnayed. Floyd Mayweather, the boxing legend, has fully endorsed Donald Trump, and I'm going to try to talk about Gene Hackman, 95-year-old Gene Hackman, and his, I think, 63-year-old wife and their dog, all found dead in their New Mexico home this morning, and the police are saying no foul play. Most people are speculating it was some sort of carbon monoxide poisoning. We'll try to get all of that covered, but we may not. Steve Kim's going to join me and help me in this discussion. And so I told these guys we'll start with Tom Brady and that, but Steve, I'm throwing a curveball right off the top. Huh? I've been so moved by the death of Gene Hackman, and so just the depth of Gene Hackman. It's like I knew Gene Hackman was great, and then this morning when I hear about his death, and I just start thinking about all of the Gene Hackman movies that I've loved and enjoyed, and just thought, this guy, Al Pacino's my favorite actor of all time. Without question, there's no peer. But when I look at the body of work of Gene Hackman, Crimson Tide, oh God, I've watched that so many times. Hoosiers, great movie. Yes. Unforgiven, Little Bill Daggett. I mean, the French Connection's an all-time great movie. Enemy of the State with Will Smith. Get Short. I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on and on and on. So I'm going to start with Gene Hackman, and I'm sorry, it's a bit of a curveball, but your thoughts and reflections on Gene Hackman, and where does he rank among the all-time greats?
Well, Jason, it's really interesting. This is about 2-3 years ago during the 3 knockdown rule. Mario Lopez and I were talking about this particular fighter who we said couldn't be in a bad fight. And he has about 10 to 15 fights that we'd rewatch. And we basically said, it's like Gene Hackman in his movies. Whatever Gene Hackman is in is invariably a good movie. So we have a list of fighters that we say, that's a Gene Hackman. And when I think of his era, and as I was preparing for this, there's a group of actors like him, Robert Duvall, Robert Redford, maybe like Paul Newman, Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, who, if they were in a movie, it had some credibility. And I'm talking about their prime as men, before they started playing roles where they're the doddering old, especially a guy like De Niro, right? But you kind of knew that movie was going to really focus on masculine leading men who are hard and tough. They weren't gonna play second fiddle to some sassy young girl that's gonna teach them lessons about life. No. They weren't doing any of that. It was from an era where you had leading men, and it was about the men, and you came away after 2.5 hours thinking, okay, I had a good steak. Like, you're satisfied. And I'll be honest with you, you're gonna be ashamed of me. I have actually never seen French Connection. I'm gonna have to do it now because it's one of those movies. When it came out, I was a young kid. I was more or less watching Bad News Bears over and over again. Got to admit that, Jason.
What is your favorite all-time Gene Hackman movie? Mine is Crimson Tide, and
right.
it's tough, but mine is Crimson Tide. I've seen that anytime it's on. I watch Crimson Tide.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know
Jason.
what it is about that submarine and Denzel Washington and just that's my number one. And it's a tough Unforgiven. I love that Western. I love Clint Eastwood, Little Bill Daggett, the villain in that. But Crimson Tide is my number one.
Well, I think in the state of Alabama, the fact they did a Roll Tide in the beginning of that movie, that must be number one, at least in that state, right? But, Jason, you know what it is for me, and they're going to replay it a lot now, given the fact we're close to March. Hoosiers. There's no doubt about it, Hoosiers. And I guarantee you there have been about 1.5 million high school coaches the last 35 years that have tried to use that as a template, the way Norman Dale whipped the Hickory High team into shape, with or without Jimmy Chipwood. And I just read a story, Jason, I don't know if you heard this, but the director for that movie said that Gene Hackman was incredibly tough, that it actually was not a pleasant experience from day one, that he was actually Norman Dale. He was on him. He would berate him. He created tension, and that the whole day, it took 39 days to make that movie, the shooting. He said for 35, it was the most stressful period of his life. And he didn't even know if Gene Hackman was going to like the movie or not, and he was scared to death. And when Gene Hackman finally saw it, he never apologized to him. He just took off his glasses and he says, "How the hell did you do that?" That was his approval. Like, you did a good job. And you know what, Jason? I think that movie only grows in stature throughout the years.
It's funny that that's not my number one, having grown up in the state of Indiana, knowing the history of the Milan basketball team, the real life. I believe Bobby Plump and the Milan from a little small town. It was based on a real life incident, or somewhat based on a real life deal in this historic in Indiana high school basketball history. And there was nobody at one time that knew more about Indiana high school basketball than yours truly as a kid. I mean, it was Indiana's one class basketball tournament was the greatest thing in sports for me as a kid, and they've ruined it. Now they got classifications, and it used to be the small schools, and that's why what made the Milan story and the Hickory story so great is they would take on the big city schools that allegedly had more talent. And I mean, Hoosiers is an awesome movie. I just happen to like Crimson Tide more and just find it more rewatchable. And maybe it's because, you throw Denzel into there, because I'm right. It was, Denzel and Gene Hackman. That's an incredible movie.
Did we mention Mississippi Burning? That's another classic Hackman film. But here's the one, and I want to go against the grain. In my top 5, and again, I've not seen as many Hackman movies as you have, but I thought he brought great life, character, and humor to this character, and it worked. Him as Lex Luthor in Superman. Because, I don't really watch a lot of these movies that have to do with
I don't watch it,
I don't watch any of the modern ones.
I'm sorry.
But when the original Superman came out, I believe in 1979 and 1980 with Christopher Reeves, the movies actually, I thought, were much closer to the comic books than they are now. I think a lot of these movies now are so dark. They go down different places psychologically, and it's not fun. When he played Lex Luthor, I thought it was hilarious. He actually came off like a lovable rogue. Like, I'm not saying you rooted for him against Superman and the rest of the world, but when he's trying to take over the world and all this other, you kind of laughed at the thing. You're thinking, okay, you know what? He's not such a bad guy except for all the criminality he does. So I would actually say that is one of my favorite roles that Gene Hackman ever played.
I'm going to go back and make one more Crimson Tide reference, because the other part of Crimson Tide that I love, being a big fan of the TV show The Sopranos, is the young James Gandolfini was in Crimson Tide.
Yes.
This is before he was Tony Soprano. And I just love watching that movie and seeing Gandolfini in a different role than Tony Soprano. Steve, are you an Unforgiven person? Did you see Clint Eastwood?
No.
Are you a little bit? Oh my God.
I know. I need to binge this weekend.
Whoa. You don't watch? Are you West? Do you like Westerns?
Not really. No, I really don't. I really don't. If you actually saw my Mount Rushmore of favorite films, you would not take me seriously as a serious person. I mean, basically, my Mount Rushmore movie is the original Bad News Bears, okay? Morris v. Butterman.
I got no problem with that.
That's a classic. Walter Matthau was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Karate Kid. Hey, I'm Asian. That Pat Morita.
Got a problem. I got a problem with that, but go ahead.
This one you're going to gung ho. Prime Michael Keaton. I actually rewatched that about a month ago. Outside of that, I thought it ran great. My fourth movie might be North Dallas 40. I thought the greatest football movie of the 70s. I thought it told the truth, pulled back the curtain on exactly what pro football really was.
No problem with that. Let me ask you this, though. North Dallas 40, what's your thoughts on Brian's song? That's
Brian's
one of the great.
It's a tearjerker. It's a tearjerker.
Yeah.
It is. It's a tearjerker. Billy D. Williams and a young James Caan. Look, every man can admit you cry two things: death of your parents, Brian's song. It's a great football movie, but it's a story of two men and a relationship. There's a racial element. I think it's great. But North Dallas 40, it's such a hard look at the harshness of pro football and what a brutal world it can be. And it's actually based on a book by Peter Gent, former Dallas Cowboy. And it had the greatest line that I think has encapsulated my philosophy on sports and what it really is. It's when Nick Nolte is getting run out of the team and he says to, I think, the owner or one of the coaches, no, it was the former player, John Matuzak, tells the coach after that big game loss, every time you call it a game, you say it's a business. And every time I say it's a business, you say it's just a game. I need feeling, man. And it just opened up my eyes like, wow. Sometimes they call it a business. Sometimes they call it a game when it's convenient. And I think that's the truest line that's ever been uttered in any sports film.
Listening to your list of movies, and it just, people's personalities clearly are different. And just, you like to watch a movie with a smile on your face, clearly. Yeah. You like to laugh. That's your deal. And I do too. And it's like, that's, you know, I love Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I love Porky's from our childhood. You know, I love Anchorman. But I like gritty, super macho movies. And I'm a little bit surprised that for you in the Westerns, I'm just surprised because you got that old school curmudgeon mentality.
Well,
you know who loves just you know who loves watching Westerns and it was in the Wright Thompson story about him, is Michael Jordan. He just sits up and writes, watches old Western movies. And that's where Unforgiven and Clint Eastwood, such a big part of me and the movies that I love.
And I want to clear this up. The Rocky movies, as a boxing guy, are very special to me. Although we do not acknowledge Rocky V. The Rocky V of that franchise is Chuck Cunningham to Happy Days. It went up to its room, and we don't ever acknowledge it again. But Jason, as a guy that played baseball at a very mediocre level, The Natural is another movie that every time it's on, at any point, I will watch it. I think Roy Hobbs and Robert Redford could actually play ball. That's the thing that really made that movie. And and Tom Selleck, Mr. Baseball. Again, that movie had a lot of crouching tigers because he played ball in Japan. And that movie's another one that I think has some great lines. But here's a gritty movie that I love. And I love the fact that Ray Lewis, before every game in his team hotel room, would actually play it on loop. Gladiator. I love the original Gladiator. I thought that was a really well-told, well-shot, well-acted story. And that scene where they come into the Coliseum finally, and they're going to get fed, and then Russell Crowe, the Spaniard, Maximus, says, hey, have you guys been in the army? Anyone been in the military? We're all stronger together than as one. And he coalesces that unit. That scene, to me, I could watch 1,000 times and never get sick of it.
I want to circle it back to Gene Hackman, and I really didn't intend on spending this long on it, but I'm just sorry.
At the movies.
I love movies.
Whitlock and Kim.
Yeah, I love movies, and I'm talking about Gene Hackman is and Steve. I got to touch on the mysteriousness of his death. you know, people. There's a lot. Was it carbon monoxide poisoning? Some people are connecting it to, hey, the Epstein files are about to be released, and people are going, Jason, you're going to regret endorsing Gene Hackman and blah blah blah. But I don't even. You know what? I mentioned that, but I don't even want to go there because all we can do is speculate as it relates to that. Tell me, who is your favorite actor of all time? And or who, maybe not your favorite, but who do you think the best is? And could Gene Hackman perhaps crack your top 5?
Oh, he has to be a candidate for the Mount Rushmore. By the way, Gene Hackman also served our country in the military. So shout out to Gene Hackman, man. Salute, rest in peace. You're gonna laugh at this, but again, this is because of my proclivity for Gung Ho and Mr. Mom. Another very funny movie. I love Michael Keaton. And I think Michael Keaton, when he played Ray Kroc a couple years ago, was really good. I think Night Shift was another great movie he's in. The Robert Redford I like. And one of my other favorite movies, I don't know if you think it's gritty, but when Paul Newman played the pool hustler shark, The Color of Money with the young Tom Cruise, that's another unbelievably well-told story that had a seriousness to it. And I love that last scene when Fast Eddie breaks the thing and he goes, 'cause I'm back. And it's just such a perfect ending to that movie. And by the way, I'm going to say this. I know it's an easy one. Young Tom Cruise, I thought was pretty damn good, Jason. I thought he was pretty damn good. He played a white cornerback. You know, that takes a lot of acting. And he played a fighter jet pilot. He also was in, I think, a couple other ones. But that guy, for whatever people want to say about him, he's been in iconic movies for a good 30 years straight, Jason. That is very difficult to do.
I'm a lot of people give me flack for saying Al Pacino is the GOAT. And people think I'm crazy. Somebody on Twitter said something to me about all he does is yell and scream. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And I know this isn't perhaps your cup of tea, but trust me, Al Pacino, great in both Godfathers. But to me, his tour de force as an actor, I don't know if you've seen this, but I'm just Scarface, and a lot of people like to talk smack on the movie Scarface. That's a classic movie. Al Pacino's acting in that is, it's just unbelievable.
Jason,
I was literally just watched it this weekend. Go ahead.
Yeah, Jason, Scarface, I used to joke. That used to be the recruiting video for the University of Miami football team. I don't think there's any doubt that Scarface and Miami Vice did more for tourism, believe it or not, for South Florida than anything in that era, the whole cocaine cowboys period of time. The knock on Al Pacino is that the last 25 years, he keeps playing Al Pacino, whether he played a football coach in any given Sunday or whether he played anything else. What is Al Pacino playing? Al Pacino as what? Al Pacino. It doesn't really matter what he's doing. He's just being Al Pacino. Okay, here's one. There's an actor on the tip of my head and my tongue that I really like, but Robert Redford is a guy that I've always liked. He just had classic leading man look. Oh, Denzel Washington. The guy played, look, in a 2-year stretch. Now, you want to talk about range. He played a lawyer in Philadelphia who was a little bit homophobic, who ended up having a great amount of affection for Tom Hanks, who had AIDS. And that movie gets very emotional. I think that movie stands the test of time. Then a short time later, his portrayal of Malcolm X, I thought, was masterful.
You're also forgetting Herman Boone. Remember the Titans, another classic movie.
Remember the Titans.
I mean, Denzel Washington takes a backseat to no one. He just didn't happen to be in The Godfather or Scarface, so he can't be my number one. And then just the last one. I don't know if I've ever seen a movie that I didn't enjoy Joe Pesci in. Joe Pesci for a little midget. I mean, you talk about a scene stealer and a little midget. Love him in Casino. Love him in Goodfellas. I'm a Joe Pesci guy.
And Jason, one more, and this is the guy I was thinking of, James Caan. James Caan's another guy that any movie that he was in, from Rollerball to The Program to anything else, and I'm a little biased because I knew his son used to work out at Wild Card Boxing. Scotty Caan, he also became a really good actor himself. But James Caan is another guy that when you saw him on screen, you said, that's masculinity. That's a man right there. So James Caan's another guy I really have a lot of respect for.
That's why Steve, I'm just sitting here blown away that you're not a Western movie freak.
I saw Wyatt Earp.
You got to watch Shane.
Yeah, I guess I
You got watch the movie Shane. Anyway, I can't believe I just spent 20 minutes on Gene Hackman. I had no intention of doing that. But I love movies. It's the story of the day. I think his whole career is fascinating. Obviously, the way he's passed away, I think is fascinating. And people are going to be talking about it. But Steve, let's take a small little break, and then we'll talk about Tom Brady and Albert Breer and all this fighting that's going on in the NFL about, is Tom Brady tampering with Matthew Stafford? But before we do that, guys, I want to talk to you about PreBorn. You guys know that that's part of our purpose here with Fearless, is that we support PreBorn because we believe and we know that life begins at conception, and no organization supports that worldview better than PreBorn. PreBorn provides expectant mothers who are considering abortion an ultrasound. They introduce that baby's heartbeat to the mother. They introduce an image of the baby while in the womb to the mother. And now that mother is more than twice as likely to choose life. And that's when PreBorn steps in, steps up, supports that mother and child up to 2 years. PreBorn is amazing. Their founder, Dan Steiner, who's been on this show that we all know, he's participated in Roll Call, been a sponsor for Roll Call. We know our money isn't wasted. We know this is one of the greatest gifts we can give to society, is saving a baby's life. Being a roadblock to abortion. What more could men do? What more could women do than be a roadblock and prevent people from making a decision that will impact that baby, in that baby's life, and then haunt that woman, that mother, for the rest of her life? There's 2 ways to give to PreBorn. We use both of them. Go to our smartphones, pound 250, say the keyword baby, pound 250, the keyword baby, or give the way that I prefer to give, preborn.com/fearless. That's preborn.com/fearless. A single heartbeat can echo across the generations. We know that because we're believers. We know what Jesus Christ and his disciples accomplished. Let's don't kill these next great disciples that may be coming here to save us. Let's don't let those babies be sacrificed in this abortion hysteria that has swept American culture. Let's be a roadblock to abortion. Pound 250, keyword baby, preborn.com/fearless. Steve, I want to circle back to you. Let's play. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I want to read you an initial post from Jordan Schultz about the Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders, and Tom Brady and Matt Stafford. Jordan Schultz of Fox Sports tweets out, sources, Raiders minority owner Tom Brady recently hosted Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford at his home in Montana, where they spent time together and went skiing. Brady has been actively trying to convince Stafford to join the Raiders, and discussions are ongoing. Several teams are interested in Stafford if the Rams decide to move him, with Las Vegas believed to be the most aggressive suitor. So that's Jordan Schultz. Here comes Ian Rappaport. He tweets out, Raiders minority owner Tom Brady and the Rams QB Matthew Stafford ran into each other at a ski resort in Montana, sources say. The meeting, unplanned, was not extensive or in-depth and did not include Brady hosting or recruiting Stafford, despite reports saying otherwise. Jordan Schultz did not take too kindly to that and had a response. If you really think Tom Brady and Matthew Stafford just happened to run into each other at a ski resort in Montana, of all places, at the exact same time, I've got a bridge to sell you. They were together over the weekend. It happened. Multiple teams are interested in Stafford, and Brady has been leading the charge to get him to the Raiders if the Rams decide to trade him. Mike Florio chimes in, Pro Football Talk, and he mentions tampering as it relates to Tom Brady. Yes, tampering happens all the time, but it's rarely blatant. If the Rams had given limited permission to Stafford's agent to talk to other teams and not a blank check to make visits to facilities, coaches, executives, and or owners, a visit by Stafford to Brady's house would be an obvious violation, as obvious as the Dolphins tampering with Brady, which resulted in a suspension for owner Stephen Ross and the loss of a first-round and third-round draft pick. While the Rams have yet to answer the question of whether a visit by Stafford to Brady's home complied with the permission given to speak to other teams, common sense suggests otherwise. The recent remarks from Coach Sean McVay on the Fitz and Wit podcast seem to indicate that the Rams wanted to give Stafford a chance to see whether the Rams' current offer to Stafford is in line with what other teams would pay. Given that the Rams want to keep Stafford, why would they tell Stafford he's free to be directly recruited in person by other teams? Steve, has Tom Brady made an error that perhaps could get him suspended or the Raiders in trouble?
Yeah, I keep going back to this. It's just like there's an issue with Tom trying to play both roles as a broadcaster and then an owner. You can be one or the other. I don't know if you can be both. And if they're going to create a special set of rules for you, which they have, he needs to play within those regulations. And there's something very, and by the way, I think the most interesting part of that story is that Rappaport and Schultz, they kind of butted heads. They actually, that to me is
They're in
the
Indianapolis
headline.
at the Combine.
Yeah, I mean.
They're in Indianapolis, and they confronted each other, or maybe Jordan Schultz confronted Ian Rappaport. Starbucks.
Right.
It's popping off.
And I think it's just alarming. The first thing I thought was, man, these guys have more competitive spirit than the NBA guys at the All-Star game. I mean, what an indictment. In my view, here's what they need to do. Since we are at the Combine, a lot of people are sitting out, right? Jason, they need to meet at the 50-yard line. It's time for the Oklahoma drill or the bull ring drill. You have those two go at it right on the 50-yard line. But this whole thing is strange. I'm still trying to get to this. I know money matters, but if you're Matthew Stafford, why are you trying to just not secure a deal and go into the Hall of Fame and say, no, the Rams have been good for me. I'm good for the Rams. It ain't really broke. We have a pretty good young football team. We took the Eagles to the brink. Let me just finish out with Sean McVay, and we're going to be good. But this whole conflict here, I'm fascinated as a writer, Jason, that has broken a few stories. Egos are really big within guys that are newsbreakers. It really is. And it becomes like a proxy war with sources and which agent are you aligned to. And I know, I'm just telling you, I've seen this happen. When you make a report of breaking news, and if people do not either source you or they try to go against your report, I've seen feelings get very heated. There's no doubt egos are involved with everyone involved.
Well, listen, I don't blame Jordan Schultz for being upset, and I'm not choosing a side here because I got no problem with Ian Rappaport. But if I break a story, hey, Tom Brady and Matt Stafford have met, and then someone comes right out and contradicts and says, no, it was just happenstance, I would be upset. And particularly I'd be upset like, hey, you're contradicting my story. Did you contact me? And because you're undermining my credibility. Did Ian and I'm not trying to choose sides here. I'm not trying to bash anybody. This stuff happens. But I don't blame Jordan Schultz for being very upset and for Jordan Schultz to be like, come on, man. You think these guys accidentally ran into each other? And I get
in Montana.
And in Montana, and he's like arguing like, hey, Ian Rappaport knows that Brady is potentially tampering here. And so Jordan Schultz is like, hey, man, you're just running cover for Tom Brady.
Yeah.
And I don't think this has anything to do with Tom Brady as a broadcaster. I think this has to do with Tom Brady as an owner, perhaps being arrogant and perhaps thinking, hey, I'm Tom Brady, the greatest player in NFL history, and I'm above the NFL rules. I can do whatever, I can flout the rules. And you know, we're so desperate to win here with the Las Vegas Raiders, and perhaps, hey, I saw what we did in New England, how we skirted the rules, how many different things that from Spygate to Deflategate to whatever. Tom Brady seems to be of the belief, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. And so that is the story. And this to me, it has nothing to do with Brady as a broadcaster. It has to do with Brady's ego and Brady coming out of the Bob Kraft, Bill Belichick regime dynasty that flouted the rules according to many people. And he's trying to bring that to the Raiders, but he's doing it in a way that, is probably going to get him in trouble. And I think Florio is accurate for, like, putting pressure on the NFL. Like, hey, man, when Stephen Ross did this, he got suspended for a year. What are you going to do here with Tom Brady?
Yeah, so now you can add Montana Gate to the ledger of Tom Brady. I don't, I'm gonna take a line, and I've stated this. It's one of my favorite phrases of all time from Michael Jerome Irvin when it came to the White House. Again, if you're gonna do the wrong thing, you still got to do it the right way. And so if you're gonna do this, you better do this in private. You better have like limousines coming out, underground tunnels where no one can see anybody, houses that no one can look into, and then you go into tunnels again where nobody sees it. But you make a great point. If other owners of the past have been harshly disciplined for tampering, what makes Tom Brady any different? I don't see how you get around it. Keep this in mind, though. When it came to Brady and Deflategate, though, he actually did miss the first month of that season. That I do recall that. So it's not like he's gotten off scot-clean for everything here.
He hasn't, but it seems to me like he's about to get smacked around again, and this may be a situation. Now, this is where the broadcasting thing would be interesting. Let's say they have to suspend him for a year as an owner. Can a suspended owner then sit on TV broadcasting games? Hey, you're suspended owner, but I still get to broadcast and call games. That's where it may get a tiny bit dicey. Yeah,
and look, here's the reality. Tom is not a natural broadcaster. He really isn't. He isn't Romo. I thought Romo made a seamless transition from player to broadcaster. Now, I didn't understand this. If we're going to have rules, and look, we're not talking about brain surgery here or rocket science, but the reality is if you work for the management or own a team, I could see why other teams would say, well, wait a minute, this guy's going to call our games, come into our facility, talk to our players, do the production meetings. There has always been this gray area that was very uncomfortable, but the National Football League allowed it because it's Tom Brady. And again, everyone plays by a different set of rules. This is Tom Brady, but I'm a little bit disappointed in Tom Brady that he has not been careful enough or intelligent enough to be able to work around those special set of rules.
Steve, here's what's, and again, this is speculative what I'm about to say, but I don't think it's that speculative. This thing's going to turn racial very quickly. If Tom Brady's not dealt with harshly here, we're going to, the golden boy, Tom Brady gets to play by a different set of rules. The guy's making, I think, $37.5 million a year as a broadcaster. He's been a disappointment. He's a downgrade from Greg Olson. And just what you said, hey, the NFL is allowing him to scout the rules. They're so desperate to keep him involved. And so we're about to, the blonde-haired golden boy gets to play by a different set of rules than everybody else. Ryan Clark right now is in the lab cooking up a take on this, and Stephen A. Smith, Shannon Sharp, they'll probably chime in right behind, and they won't be totally misguided here, potentially. This could get really interesting. Tom Brady could mess around and get suspended from the NFL and dumped as a broadcaster.
And you know what? To be fair, if they made that point, those gentlemen you listed, they wouldn't be incorrect. It actually would be very difficult in this particular instance to disagree with them. Would it not?
It would be very difficult, and it would, the image optics conscious NFL, I think, would react. They got a problem, throwing Tom Brady overboard as a broadcaster and suspending him as an owner to protect the optics of the deal. Yeah, I think they would do that. And Fox Sports may actually want a way to get out from underneath because they'd probably like to reinstall Greg Olson as their number one broadcaster. And maybe they just,
So would most of their audience. So would most of the audience. Let's be honest. And I'm a Greg Olson guy. I'm biased,
not sure.
I admit, but still.
I do think Olson's good. I'm not sure if I think Brady is as bad as everyone says he is, but he hasn't been great. He's not worth $37.5 million or whatever they're paying him. Steve, let's keep it moving because I am on a little bit of a tight window. And so I want to move on to Albert Breer saying something very interesting. I've been monitoring the Shedeur Sanders quarterback situation for it because how long? It's been a year. I've been calling the guy Dak Prescott. He's Dak Prescott. We went through the whole college season. Oh, he's the best quarterback in college football, and he's this and he's that. And I'm like, this dude is Dak Prescott. And, the Big 12 isn't quite the SEC, and it's great what he did in the Big 12. He's got all these great receivers. The guy seems to be falling in the draft and may have made the right decision in terms of, I'm not going to go to wherever they're hosting. Is it in Green Bay this year? I can't remember where the NFL draft is. I'm not going to go. I'm going to stay at home. He may have made the right decision. Here's Albert Breer talking about Shedeur Sanders, Deion's boy, falling in the NFL draft.
I think the issue with Shedeur, and this is going to be a difficult thing for him to address over the next 6 or 7 months, or 6 or 7 weeks, is are you special in any one area? Do you have a superpower trait? Or are you an average athlete with an average arm in an NFL context? And I think that that's the way a lot of teams look at him. He's not a great athlete. He doesn't have a big arm. So, where is the superpower that's going to make you want to take him in the top 5? And I think you attach that then to what the teams in the AFC are looking up at. And that's sort of this Mount Olympus of quarterbacks, right? So if you're Tennessee picking first or Cleveland picking second, I'll borrow a term that Daniel Jeremiah used with me a few days ago. It's almost like you have to chase ceiling, because it's not can this guy be a good player, it's can this guy be good enough to compete with Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow in the AFC. And oh, by the way, when you get by those guys, you've still got more guys with a lot of upside in CJ Stroud and Trevor Lawrence and Bo Nix and Drake May. It's a gauntlet, So, if you draft Shedeur Sanders in the top 5 or top 10 picks, could he get up and running pretty fast? I think he probably could.
Yeah.
5 years from now, are you going to be comfortable giving him $55, $60, $65 million a year? I think that's the question.
Didn't even mention Justin Herbert on that list. I think it's a great take. I think he just nailed it here as it relates to Shedeur. I'm not saying I wouldn't draft him. Second round, third, but he's not your savior. He's Dak Prescott.
Well, hold on. I was just thinking about this. Hasn't Dak Prescott had multiple Pro Bowl years? Hasn't he actually finished pretty high in the MVP rating or voting? So Dak Prescott's actually
Has he won a Super Bowl?
Well, okay, that's true. He's also won a lot of football games. My question is, you're using that as, I would say, as a pejorative, but I would argue if he's Dak Prescott, that's actually not bad. Dak Prescott, I get it. He has not been Troy Aikman. He has not been Roger Staubach. May not even be Danny White. But are we sure that Shedeur has the type of ceiling to do everything Prescott has? Lead you to multiple 12-win seasons, be in the MVP discussion, be a good teammate, put up really good numbers, and be solid. That's the point that I'm making. It's not that easy to be Dak Prescott. We can say what we want. And you're right, though, but he was a 4th-round draft choice. But what is going on with Shedeur Sanders is the difference between a lot of people watching highlights and clips and the difference with teams looking at actual game film. Huge difference.
Well, I just think it's what the teams are looking at is that they actually understand what's happening. And they're translating it, hey, this isn't going to happen in the NFL. He's not going to get away with holding the ball. And once he starts to run, there will be 7 guys, the corners, the safeties, and 3 linebackers, and maybe a defensive end. There may be 8 guys on the defense who can all outrun Shedeur Sanders. That's not the case in college football. And then why does he exit the pocket so frequently when maybe you should be stepping into the pocket? And then where I think Albert Breer probably didn't want to go, but where I will go. And the reason I keep saying he's Dak Prescott is because Dak Prescott was a 3rd or 4th round draft pick. That's what I'm saying. If there was a true evaluation of Shedeur, that's where people would have him graded. But where he isn't Dak Prescott, that I think is really hurting him, is like Dak Prescott is a leader. Dak Prescott is a guy that a franchise can lean into, a head coach, ownership, blah, blah, blah. Whereas Deion Sanders' son is a rapper, a guy that's worried about his image and going to fashion shows. He's baby Cam Newton is what scares people to death. He's got Dak Prescott's talent and Cam Newton's personality, and that would take him off my 1st round draft board.
Well, our guy Cam was also 6'6", 250, probably ran a 4.5, one of the greatest physical freaks I've ever seen. So that stuff makes up for a lot of other things. The alarming thing about Shedeur is that there's a stereotype of every black quarterback being Randall Cunningham. He really isn't. And he fades back a lot. And I look back at Colorado, the personnel they had, especially against Big 12 teams. Travis Hunter, elite. Will Shepard, really good. Jimmy Horn. So he had guys that immediately can get open, wide open throwing windows, and he was pretty good in the quick game. Jason, what if he goes to a team that does not have that decided advantage outside? And naturally, the NFL throwing windows shrink by this much. What is open in the college game is almost never available at that next level, and there are still, and no one wants to say it publicly, and I understand why. How will this guy be able to lead grown men? How will he, because one thing about Dak, he is solid and stable as meatloaf night on Tuesday. He's reliable, he's sound, he's not flashy, but he never lets you down either, for the most part.
Here's the thing that I would like about Shedeur Sanders. If you get him in the right spot, the tail end of the 1st round, 2nd or 3rd round, now you'll have a super motivated quarterback. Now you'll have a guy with a chip on his shoulder and something to prove, where I think he's been coddled through junior high, high school, and college by his dad. His dad's coached him, and that's the other red flag. It's like the guy's only been coached by Deion. And that's another red flag for a lot of NFL franchises. And so I would, if I can get Shedeur in the 2nd round, 3rd round, and he now comes in with this chip on his shoulder and something to prove, now I think I have a guy that will be all in. Now, if he starts to have success in year 1, 2, or 3, will he then revert back and be someone that's uncontrollable, or will he be someone like, and Tom Brady went in the 6th round and came into the NFL he carried that chip for 20 straight years. But a super duper motivated and humbled by the draft experience, Shedeur Sanders, I would take a flyer on that guy in the 2nd or 3rd round, but I would not touch Shedeur in the 1st round. I think there's other players that, at other positions, even if I needed a quarterback, I'd rather invest in one of these guys who actually has a 1st round grade on them. No one wants to say it, but there's Coach JB. I'm just Shedeur is not Shedeur is just not a first-round quarterback. He's Dak Prescott with Cam Newton's bad personality.
Well, Coach JB has not liked any quarterback since Troy Aikman in 1989, for the record. But let's make this clear. I go back to Lamar Jackson, who had incredible athletic measurables. Here's a guy that won a Heisman Trophy, and you knew athletically that right there's an unbelievable foundation. Jason, I think he was the last pick, or one of the very last picks of the first round, coming into the National Football League. In fact, I think he was the last first-round draft choice of the great Ozzie Newsome. So if a guy like Lamar, who had superior athleticism and was even more award-winning star-studded quarterback, can drop, it should not be a huge surprise that Shedeur would drop also, maybe even more into that. I'm talking about, to me, if you really look at it, Cam Ward, I'm biased. I think he's a top 10 to 15 player. I do not look at him as a top 3. When I look at a top 3 quarterback, I'm talking about Andrew Luck, John Elway, Troy, and guys of that ilk. Ward still has some issues in terms of, can he take the loose change and the easy throw and not get too complicated and just play within script. When it comes to Shedeur, the questions I have are overall arm strength and some of the intangibles in terms of leadership and guiding men to the promised land in National Football League.
Steve, hold for 1 second. I want to move to Floyd Mayweather. He had some interesting things to say about our president. But before I do that, I want to tell you guys, as always, this Friday, tomorrow, we're going to be playing Listen or Lose, chance for you to win $100 in Bitcoin from the Fold app. Foldapp.com/Whitlock. Download the app. It's how I'm acquiring Bitcoin. If you're late to the whole Bitcoin deal, Fold app is a great opportunity to get involved and learn about Bitcoin. They've partnered with us on a game we play. Listen all week, answer some trivia questions. You answer the most among 3 contestants, you win $100 in Bitcoin. It goes straight to your Fold app on your smartphone. There's an easy way to join and play. You get to engage with me. If you want to talk a little smack to me about some opinion I've had this week, play Listen or Lose, bring you on air. Email me or Butter at lolonfearless@gmail.com. lolonfearless@gmail.com. Download the Fold app at foldapp.com/Whitlock. We'll play Listen or Lose on Friday like we do every Friday. You answer the most questions, you win $100 in Bitcoin. Steve, I want to circle back. There's some news out of boxing. Floyd Mayweather has joined the MAGA movement. Let's watch Floyd Mayweather, who was on Fox Business yesterday, and just from out of nowhere, he started singing the praises of our boy Donald Trump. Play the clip.
At least I'm happy, but we're never happy. When we had Trump before, we didn't appreciate him, but I think Trump is a great president. Actually, he's the best president in my eyes. He's the best president we ever had. Great businessman, and that's what it's about.
Yeah, and the way the day's cabinet thing, you probably went around here. It was really phenomenal. To the point you talked about. Putting together a great team.
Yes,
put together a fantastic cabinet.
Trump has done an amazing job, and a lot of people around America are upset. But no matter who goes in the White House, we're always upset.
Right.
And I think Trump is the man for the job. He's the best president in my eyes.
I also been.
That's my man Charles Payne, and Charles Payne I consider a friend, and Charles Payne is an inspiration. Yeah, Charles Payne, he's dropped probably 50, 60, 70 pounds. He's basically stayed away from the snack machine. But anyway, Floyd Mayweather jumping on the money team jumping on board with Team Trump, probably not that surprising, but it is. I'm glad to see it. And because trust me, there'll be a lot. How could Floyd Mayweather say the best president ever? Doesn't he know Barack Obama was president? Hats off to Floyd Mayweather here. Are you shocked, Steve, that Floyd Mayweather jumped on the Trump train?
As someone that was banned by Floyd Mayweather for about 20 years, we don't exactly see eye to eye. We don't really like each other. Our mutual Disadmiration society is very strong. But when me and Floyd agree, oh, we really agree. Oh, God. I mean, I'm surprised he didn't say Donald Trump's a hell of a young president. He's a young lion. He's a hell of a young president, man. But I'm not surprised, though, Jason. At Donald Trump's first inauguration ceremony, that one was actually outdoors, so that's 2017. You know who was there in person? Floyd Joy Mayweather. So this does not surprise me, but I think it goes to your point about the shifting culture of now it's more than okay to say, I like that guy. I like Don Quirius, John Tavius Trump. And to me, let's just go back to the 80s when Donald Trump was just this real estate guy who would also put on multi-million-dollar boxing matches, and he did some historic ones. Rappers and celebrities, and a lot of black celebrities, they had no issues with Trump. In fact, they loved the guy. To a point, he got NAACP Lifetime Achievement Awards. Look it up. So I give Floyd credit because I know that he's still going to get blowback from the community. He might even lose a few fans. But as a fellow entrepreneur and a true American patriot, I think he just said, you know what? I like Donald Trump. Deal with it.
I did not know that he was on the Trump train in 2016. That's fascinating.
He's made other statements.
And when
yeah, Jason, he has made other statements where he said, look, I think Trump's okay. And there was actually video of that day, the inaugural, and I was surprised. I really was. But look, Floyd likes money. That's why the TMT logo is what it is, the money team. He is a capitalist. It almost would make no sense for Floyd and Donald Trump not to be aligned in a lot of ways, if you really think about it.
Well, and I think with most heterosexual men, they are in black, white, green, whatever. If you're a heterosexual man, you don't really have a problem with Donald Trump. Unless, and I'm sorry to say this will offend many of perhaps my friends and others, but unless you're afraid of your woman. The only heterosexual men that I know that, can't get on board with Donald Trump are guys that are afraid of their woman. And I'm not saying that to be offensive, and I'm not in their situation where they could divorce me and take half my stuff, make it hard for me to see my kids and all that other stuff. Yeah. But Floyd Mayweather doesn't have that fear, obviously. And the men that don't have that fear are free to say what they actually think. And they'll get their woman on board with what they actually think, or they'll find someone new. But that, the stronghold and the leverage that's being used against many black men that run around and cosplay like they hate Donald Trump. And oh my God, Donald Trump said, grab him by the P word. And Donald Trump likes women. And Donald Trump, it's all cosplay. They don't really believe it. Floyd doesn't have to play that game. And this is why so many people talk about, hey, get off the Democratic plantation. Because thoughts, your desires, it's all gate kept. And so Floyd is just free. And he's financially free, and he's not married, and he's not afraid of losing access to women by supporting Trump.
Well, and I want to make a prediction for Floyd Mayweather and his plans this weekend. He will be at the Tank Davis fight at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. Tune in. But Sunday he will not be at Jamal Bryant's congregation in church. Right there. Book it. Guaranteed.
Steve, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to let you go, and we'll see you tomorrow. Great conversation about Gene Hackman. You need to go watch Unforgiven. But sir, I want to disassociate Steve from my final comments here on Floyd Mayweather, which is just somewhat a reiteration of what I've already said. But what Floyd Mayweather represents, and why I was so thrilled, and I'm saying I didn't know in 2016, but it really just doesn't surprise me that Floyd Mayweather has never had to go along with the narrative that somehow Donald Trump is beyond the pale. And oh my God, he's this threat to women and black people. He's never been that threat. Now, if you're the Central Park Five and you're involved with wilding and you're on tape confessing to crimes in Central Park, you're on tape. Don't buy these phony documentaries and phony movies. Don't buy the phony narrative. Oh God, these were just innocent young boys out playing in the park and the police framed them. It's not true. You can go watch them confess to their role. And these guys weren't exonerated. And so they were not exonerated. Their conviction was, what do they call it? Some kind of Alfred plea, or not exonerated. They served all the time they were supposed to say, and then in some kind of bogus deal, go look up the facts. But this whole deal about Donald Trump and racism and threat to black men and black people is a joke. Floyd Mayweather knows it. Some of y'all, again, I don't blame you, vacated. Yeah, it was vacated, not exonerated. Some of y'all so afraid of your women, you can't live in reality. And I feel sorry for you, and you need to get in your Bible and get your woman in line, to fall in line. And she'll only follow you if you're authentically following God. And some of them are so crazy that they won't follow you because they really don't want to follow God. They want to follow themselves. You got the wrong woman. Don't be hating on Floyd Mayweather. Don't be hating on any of these other free, and I guess people have a problem with Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, using the word Negroes. Don't be mad at these other free Negroes that are like, man, I'm not gonna play this game with y'all with Donald Trump. I know who the real racists are. The people out there supporting Planned Parenthood and the killing of black babies in the womb. I know who the real racists are. It's the people that built a culture around shuffling black men into homosexuality and transgenderism and all that other debauchery. It's the people that want you bending your knee to the matriarchy. That's who the real racists are. All right, I gotta go. I'm gonna hop on Piers Morgan's show. We'll play tomorrow, and we'll see you tomorrow.